Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine then.
Okay. All right. So we'll get into it. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Mike, for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast. And for those people who may not know who you are, can you give us a little introduction?
Sure. So I'm the managing editor of Cool Material. That's my main position. It's a men's lifestyle site. If people aren't familiar with it, started as a real uh, gadgets, gear, tech, all that kind of stuff, new product blog for guys with a guy, male focus. It's expanded a lot in the time that I've been there. I've been with the company now for about 6 years, 7 years. We've evolved into doing all kinds of lifestyle pieces. We now run a fairly decent sized e-commerce shop. So that's a big project for us now too. But yeah, I run all the editorial with it. So it's a staff of freelancers that we have, and one senior editor who works with us. And it's a small team that I run, and we just try to put out great content with a male focus, 20s, 30s, that age range, and still focusing mostly on gear, gadgets, and products, but it expanded a little past that. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Very cool. Yeah, Cool Material's been. I think I said this when I reached out to you originally. As anybody does, I get tons and tons of email stuff like every day, and I've even like gotten to use a piece of software like Unroll Me. I don't know if you've seen that. It's probably your worst nightmare as somebody who manages an email newsletter. But Cool Material, literally for probably the past 3 to 4 years that I've known about it, has consistently actually been one of the newsletters that I open every single day, because anytime I don't see it, I'm like, oh no, how did I miss that thing that, I came across later? So, it's one of the reasons why I reached out.
Listen, I appreciate it. And, for us and for me, Tim Jacobson, who started the site, his focus originally and still is, was curation, but you got to do it well. There's when he started the site, it was a time when having a personal blog and having a site like that, it was kind of new. There were some others like it, but it was fairly new, and he wanted to stand out by making sure that the stuff that was on that site was it really reflects things he enjoyed, but also a level of quality. And we always wanted to make sure that things are just done better. We want to make sure we're putting time into selecting the products, and we really want to put time into crafting copy that is that has some effort behind it. So we always love hearing stuff like that, because it is a time where there's so many options. There's so many sites out there now, and the only way to really stand out and to really succeed is to stay true to who you are, and to really put some hard work behind your site. And I think we do that. So it's always nice to hear that it resonates with people. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you actually touched on something that I love there, is being true to who you are. And I think especially, like you said, in a really crowded environment, whether that's, you're looking for a job and there's lots of other candidates, or you're running something like a blog or a podcast or anything like this, right? There has to be a way that you kind of stand out, and that being true to yourself. So I guess, what was it that really attracted you to the company you're working for now, Cool Material? How did you get involved with that? How did you get connected?
Sure. So sticking with the theme of being true to yourself, I went to school for journalism. I wanted to be a writer or broadcaster in some capacity, and I was my first, well, not my first job, but one of my jobs after I got out of college. I was working at a radio station, and I loved the job. I was doing production and a morning show on a top 40 station. It was really cool, like a great job, and I loved it. And I just missed the writing aspect. So I started freelancing. I was doing freelancing work for a few different sites, Cool Material being one of them. Actually, Cool Material is one of the sites I used as prep in the morning before the radio show. So I was like finding cool stuff to talk about. So that's how I came across the site originally. It was still very much in its infancy at this time. It was still just a smaller gear product blog site. And I'd stumbled across it, and I was using it as one of the sites to do prep in the morning. And when I decided to, kind of find more writing opportunities because I was missing that, it was one of the places I reached out to. And Tim was cool enough to say, "Hey, yeah, come on. The site's growing really nicely right now. It's really just me and a couple other people trying to make this all happen." So he was like, "Yeah, why don't you come on and write a few pieces and see how it goes." So I did that, and Tim was cool enough to like it and bring me on as a full-time freelancer, I guess, whatever that means. So I was freelancing every day. I was writing pieces every day for the site, and he eventually, maybe it was about a year or so later, 2 years later, said, "Hey, listen, the site's really grown. It's gotten to a point where we need more people who are really full-time working for this site." He was full-time. We had a designer, we had someone running the e-commerce platform, and that was really it. And that was everybody. And they were all wearing a million hats. And so he said, "Listen, I'd love to bring you on as managing editor. Would you be interested in it?" And it just so happened at this time that the radio station I was working for had some financial issues, and it was never made completely clear that my job might be in jeopardy, but I kind of got the idea that a lot of us might have, some challenges keeping our job. So it just kind of happened at the exact same time. Luckily, the radio station ended up being fine, and I know, I have good friends over there. But I took the position with Cool Material, and I was so thrilled to be doing something like that, and it just really. I love writing. I love the amount of creativity Tim allows me to put into the site, and it's just been a blast. I going back to what we were just talking about, being true to yourself. Since I was in school, my thing has always been I wanted to find a job that makes me happy. I'll find a way to make the money work somehow, and if it's not, then I'll be honest with myself and I'll find a way to do it. But I want to try to do things that really fascinate me. So I jumped to radio and I jumped to writing and doing this fun site where I tell people that, "Oh, I got a trip this week and it's to go out to a brewery and it's to write about, beer while I taste beer with these guys." And they're like, how'd you do that? So, yeah, that was kind of my journey to the site. And it's been a fun one. Yeah.
Have you had that experience, I guess, again, being in a role that's almost a little bit non-traditional? You kind of spend some time doing some freelance stuff and you worked for a radio station, all these kind of things that, it sounds like to me, you've really kind of just chased stuff. Like you said, that I want to have fun at my job. I want to enjoy it. I want to love it. Have you gotten a lot of pushback from like people in your life or family members on that type of stuff where they're like, what are you doing? Find a stable position, or, especially when you start freelancing almost full time. Did you get a lot of pushback on that, or have people really supported that?
I was lucky enough to have a very supportive family. My parents never once tried to push me towards one of the directions that they both worked in pharmaceuticals, and it seemed like a very that was a set career path, and that's something I saw them, as I was growing up. That's what they did. They stayed with the same companies for almost my entire life. And they never once tried to push me into something else. So that was super supportive. The only real pushback has been, at times internal, where you kind of feel like, hey, okay, should I really, for a second here, reevaluate, and should I be, trying to find a kind of more linear path that has, a few more dollar signs and in the future. And I lose that feeling every day. I go into my office and I'm happy to be there, and it doesn't stick around long. So no, I've been very lucky. Yeah, I've been very lucky with the people in my life who have supported me. I mean, I know my mom, when I was at the radio station, hearing me anytime I was on the air was the greatest kick for her. She loved it, and she would tell her friends. And I think she was just happy for me. She was happy for me doing something that I really enjoyed, and they've been that way. So,
Yeah.
that part of it's always been. I've been very lucky there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. It's cool to hear somebody else who's had that experience, because that was very much my experience. Even though it's interesting, I actually work
Sure.
for one of the organizations my dad owns right now. But
Yeah.
through going through high school, and I actually went into college as a music major and stuff like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, he went with me to every single thing to see the music department and everything, and just never even said a word about it. It was just like, like, that sounds great. Just like, and it allowed me to completely explore all these different options. And I don't know if it was like one of those I told you so's when I decided to major in computer science and change my major and end up working for him or anything like that. But that's very much the way my upbringing was, right? It was just like, figure out what you want to do, figure out what makes you happy, you do stuff that you love to do.
Sure. I mean, that's great. That's great. And it's also like, I mean, I don't know if it's rare, but I feel like it's not something I guess with friends and stuff has heard as much about.
Right.
Maybe it's because they chose more obvious, or not obvious, that's not the right word, but career paths that
more traditional.
You kind of have an idea. Yeah, traditional. You kind of have an idea where you're going with it. So I'm not sure. And then you see, I just watched Lady Bird last night.
Okay.
Which you see these in coming of age movies all the time, where it's the parents are kind of just saying what you're saying. Do go this way. I have this wisdom from years of experience. This is what you're going to wish you did. And my parents were never like that. It doesn't sound like you had that kind of upbringing, which is
not at all.
It fosters creativity, and I think that's a good thing. I also understand the other point of view, though. So I don't know if one's right, one's wrong, but I think I was lucky to have somewhat similar to what you had, where it was a little more, do what you want to do and make it work. So that's kind of what I've tried to do.
Yeah, I've heard that, or I haven't heard, what you're talking about. Again, what it seems like very similar upbringings, like you said. I haven't heard that a lot. And it's so interesting to me, because it was so the opposite of just the way everything worked in my family. Right. So it's always really interesting to hear that. So, but that's awesome. Is writing something that you've always wanted to do? I know you said you studied journalism in college. Has there ever been kind of a different path you were heading down, and you all of a sudden kind of made a major shift?
I mean, in college, I guess since high school, I kind of just wanted to write and be a journalist. Really, that was like my first thing. I wanted to write for a newspaper, and that was kind of the first goal. And I didn't know exactly how that was going to happen. And when I got to college, I went to Rutgers, and the way it was split up is basically when you majored in journalism, you majored in both print journalism and broadcast journalism. So I almost, not by choice, had both arenas explained to me by some people who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
So that was the point where I really got conflicted between, part of me really wanted to do, radio or do some form of journalism on television or radio or something like that. But I still always had the passion for writing. The writing aspect was always what drew me into it originally. So I've never deviated from it. I've always, they're all kind of somewhat similar, but writing was always the one thing that I wanted the most. I think that when I was working in radio, the one thing I was missing was writing more stuff. And that's why I was freelancing. And for a while, it was just doing both at the same time, which filled a lot of time. But I think I've come back to writing as really my main passion, my main career passion.
Yeah. Do you get to do a lot of writing as the managing editor, or are you mostly kind of administering things?
It's less than it used to be when I was free. We've gone through phases with the site. It's changed over time. We've tried to adapt, and we've tried to, do what works and what also, our audience wants. It used to be more writing. There's still certain topics that I feel a little more knowledgeable about, so I'll handle them. Whereas there's definitely topics that our writers know way more than I do about, so they handle them. So I hop in it when I can, but managing editor, that title really, at least at our company, it involves a lot of random stuff that I guess you wouldn't really normally say would be a managing editor, I guess.
Okay.
But being a smaller company, we all still wear a lot of hats. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of different stuff that comes with it. But yeah, mostly just working with the writers, working working with advertisers for sponsored campaigns, and then working with our team in the Cool Material shop to write copy that actually moves products, which is a totally different kind of well, not a totally different kind, but a different kind of writing. So
Hmm.
it's less writing these days, but it's still enjoyable. I still get to write a decent amount, so it's not too it's not like I'm complaining at all.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, and listen, it's a fun position.
yep. So I guess as you've stepped into this position, you've kind of gotten out of what was probably a comfort zone in just writing. Has there been a
Mhm.
lot of stuff you've kind of learned about yourself as you've had to kind of take on these other responsibilities and maybe, view yourself as the glue that holds kind of these different pieces together and stuff like that? Have there's been then realizations about who you are and the skills you have as you've gone through that?
Oh, absolutely, without question. I think I guess in my head back in the day when I heard manager or a position where you had people working, I don't even like to say under you, but just like you're kind of pointing certain people in a direction. That's like a skill that, you know, um, and part of me feels like it's either you kind of have it or you kind of don't. And I
Hmm.
didn't know whether I did or whether I didn't. And there was definitely an adjustment period where, I view myself as a pretty nice guy. I like to, I'd rather get along with people than have any kind of conflict.
Right.
So I felt like at the beginning of taking on such a position where there was, people I was actually kind of like assigning stuff to and talking to and giving feedback to. Um, that being nice, you kind of have to merge that with being a little bit not tougher, but like um, you have to be honest, and you have to lead sometimes with a little bit more of a strict and urgent and less buddy buddy manner, I
Right.
guess. And that was a big change for me.
Hmm.
I think I didn't know what to expect, and it became clear that if you're just going to be Mr. Nice Guy all the time with the guys who are writing for you, it's not going to work. It's going to be a detriment to the site. It's going to be a hindrance to the site growing. And I learned that fairly quickly, and that was a weird change. It was like something that they don't teach you in school, but
Right.
really really was important. So that was absolutely the biggest thing that stuck out to me was just being a manager, and how do you do that? Like, I don't think journalism school prepared me to like be a boss in any way.
Right.
So that's one thing that you kind of have to learn on the job, I guess.
Yeah.
For some people, for me, it was absolutely.
It's interesting because I hear that a lot. I do a little bit of like personal coaching and stuff like that, and it's one of those
Sure.
things that comes up all the time, right? People are like, "Man, I
Yeah.
was really good at marketing, or I was really good at writing, or I was really good at accounting, like whatever it was." And it's like, I got promoted to be the director of the division or the department or something like that, and all of a sudden, it's like, I got promoted to a position I was completely unprepared for because I was really good at something else, right? It's really
Right. Right.
interesting. And I think there are people who like they naturally step up into that, right? They
Yeah.
they
Yeah. For
have some of
sure.
those realizations that you had, right? They discover something about themselves, which is that like, hey, people will follow me, right? Whether
Yeah. Yeah.
that's, lots of different styles or whatever, but that's always really interesting to hear what that experience is like for people.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you've experienced it completely too. Then I mean, it's interesting because I almost look back on like in college that wasn't taught to you in class, but then you start thinking about like the college experience, at least for me.
Hmm.
And there were other aspects of being in college where you learn some things that actually are very applicable to your future career that are not part of the classroom. And
Right.
I guess that's like one of those things while it's happening while you're in school, it doesn't like really stand out. But it pops up randomly, for me a decade later, and all of
Hmm.
a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that was something I actually picked up while I was at school. So,
Yep.
but yeah, I get, it's like you're saying, it's something you learn about yourself, and you know how you're going to be able to handle it. I don't know. Like I didn't know at all. I just kind of stepped into it, thought I had an idea, and it was definitely a learning process. And I think I've come a long way in that category where it's something I didn't feel ultra prepared for. As soon as I felt like this was not, this style doesn't work so well, it was definitely a change.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Hoppist.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Hoppist is exciting. I'm a big craft beer guy. It's one of the topics on Cool Material I've covered for a long time.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, we've thought recently just about how it's a changing landscape with online media, and what is going to make you successful today. It's not as easy as it was. There's different ways. You have to get a little more creative today.
Yeah.
Advertising is a little bit different today than when I started. So we were looking for other possibilities, and one of those ideas was to do some like very specific email newsletters.
Okay.
And so Hoppist is kind of just, it's a very simple idea. It's fun craft beer news, stories, articles, good content related to beer, sent to your email inbox every week, and a little bit of personality from me. And that's really it. We want to stay like super focused, but I think, for me, I think there has been, and there still is an opportunity to provide uh, beer coverage that doesn't fall back to, I don't know how to put it, but beer writing for a long time has felt very kind of like not serious.
Okay.
And I get why, because beer is like, oh, it's a fun topic, but
Hmm.
it was never like it was never taken the way it is today. There's some outlets doing it really well now, I think, but for a long time it felt very in need of something like that. So now that there are a few outlets, we're trying to round up the really good articles from those guys and share them with our readers. And it's been a great little start to it. We're less than a year old. We've got about 45,000 subscribers to the email, so
Wow.
we've got a nice little fan base. And yeah, it's been really a little fun project for me and the team.
So is that something that kind of just came out of an interest that you had?
Yeah, I mean, we were having a meeting. We always have these meetings where we just toss around ideas for. They're actually a lot of fun. We toss around ideas for cool material shop products.
Hmm.
Like we actually create some, so we'll toss those around, and we just toss around ideas for like new avenues we could be exploring. It's a very kind of we're all pretty good friends at our office, which is a neat little. It's about 8 of us in there, and
That's cool.
we're all really close. So we have a good time doing these kind of meetings. And Tim had come up with the idea that, hey, we should look into these email newsletters. This could be a good avenue to reach different audiences, to find some new advertising opportunities, and uh, to make them kind of different from Cool Material. So Hoppist was, the one that made a lot of sense for me, because I was into craft beer, and it was a topic I'm somewhat knowledgeable about. So yeah, I just took that one on, but it's been a really cool little side hustle
Hmm.
for the last year or so. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Is
Yeah,
there
no, I've really enjoyed it. Yeah.
is there typically like a unifying theme around some of the ones that you guys create? I guess I haven't been exposed to some of the other ones other than Cool Material.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious, do you guys
Sure.
see there's like a
Yeah.
unifying idea or kind of like identity to the company that says, yeah, this fits, that doesn't?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them have been male focused. I mean, that's how Cool Material started. Uh, it the company's evolution has been interesting, because there was some other sites along the way that were had different audiences that eventually just didn't end up lasting with us. But a lot of the stuff we do now has somewhat of a male focus. Like we kind of view it like an online, like if you took like an Esquire personality,
Yeah.
We never want it to be like bro. Like that's
Hmm.
not the kind of like look that's not what we're looking for, which is fine. I mean, there's places that do that and they do it well, but that's not what we're going for. We're trying to be, somewhat a little more sophisticated with it, but like with a guy focus. That's been the unifying theme. Some of the others, there's Elevator, which is an email newsletter kind of that plays off of our link roundups, which is
Okay.
something that we've done on Cool Material for some time.
Yeah.
Just kind of giving you the best of random stuff on the web. It's very loose, but
Hmm.
kind of fun. Like it's a fun curated list of just interesting stories for the last day or two.
Yeah.
And then there's Shift. Shift is a kind of health, personal growth email newsletter, which is again tailored towards guys.
Yeah.
So they've all kind of like been, we're talking to somewhat the same audience. Males from 18 to 49 is kind of the the wheelhouse that we're looking at. Other than that, it's the other similarities just come from us having similar interests,
Yeah.
or just being around Cool Material for so long. That's kind of informed us a little bit ourselves.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was, or I found really interesting about Cool Material is that I guess that specific one, Cool Material, doesn't
Mm.
have such a singular focus. And it's also because I've caught on to the fact that it's like clearly this is geared towards guys, guys kind of in my age range. I can see it going down a little bit younger, a little bit older, like you're saying.
Yep.
I've gotten that message, but it
Mhm.
was never anywhere that said like, "Hey, Cool Material, the newsletter for guys who something or other," right? And that was one of the
Yeah.
things I thought was really cool about it. Is it touches on tons of topics that
Mhm.
almost every single one of them, like, yeah, I find that interesting. It's like I'm not into video games per se, but yeah, I play like Firewatch or whatever. Like, and you guys listed that as like most beautiful video games of 20s, or something like that, And it was
Sure.
like, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like, and like craft beer. It's like, yeah, I mean, I know there's the guys who are like they're
Yeah.
into craft beer, right? But it's like, yeah, that's really cool.
Sure. Yeah.
I love learning about that. And there's just been so many things like the different gadgets and like I use the word notebooks and stuff like that. It's like
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
it's really cool. Like how I guess I'm digging into something I don't even know if you have an answer to, which is like, what's the
Well,
what's
no,
the
I
why
think I get where
behind
you're
it?
getting. Sure. Yeah. Well, we ask ourselves that a decent amount. Like, what fits, what doesn't.
Yeah.
Um, we've done tons of work where we try to come up with like a board of like the cool, who is the Cool Material reader, and what is he into and what could he be into. And we come back to this a lot, but our unifying thing is just like a lot of the guys in the office and a lot of the guys curating for this site are the guys we're kind of speaking to.
Yeah.
And so we just bounce ideas off each other. And a lot of the times it's just like, we'll find something that normally it'll be like, hey, we haven't featured anything like this before, but we just got a feeling that this is kind of like what we'd like. I like it. So
Hmm.
why, I think, and listen, it doesn't always work. There's definitely times where we post something and it's a complete flop. And, and, we were just, hey, we were wrong.
Right.
But, yeah, we try to paint a full picture. I'm not a big fan of any sites or publications where it's so clearly stereotypical about somebody.
Right.
I think it's, that's a big turnoff for me, when it's just like so obvious, like every pick is so obvious.
Yeah.
So I like to think of our reader as like a really rounded kind of like guy who has a lot of different interests. And it's funny how many times that like we see something and we're like, yeah, I think that could work. I kind of am into that, and then it ends up being a hit for us.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of a bad answer, but it's really just us like trusting in our guts
Right.
what we enjoy. So yeah, we listen. That's a topic of conversation around our office all the time. That like, will this fit? Won't this fit? Who's reading this site? Who is the person reading this? And
Hmm.
it comes up so much, but we fall back on just, hey, if we're into it, let's give it a shot.
Right.
We like to take some chances with it. It definitely misses up there every once in a while, but we like to think we do a good job with curating, and the site's done well, so that's a
Yeah.
testament to it, and we're really really excited about that. And then Word Notebooks was that's a side project of ours as well, which has
Hmm.
been super exciting, where we were literally in a meeting one day for Cool Material, and Tim, the founder, was realized we were all using these little pads of paper that we had put
Right.
together, or like a notebook here, a notebook there, and we all had our own little system of doing the, kind of checklists or like bullet point lists for the work we had to do.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, why don't we just, make something that's our own, and we can make these notebooks, and he's so cool with this stuff where he was just like rolls with it, and we're like, yeah, and it became, it's a nice little profitable company. So
Right.
it's neat, and a lot of it always just comes back to, trust in our guts, which is, maybe not the best business advice, I guess, but it's worked for us,
Well, it's interesting because it comes back to, I guess what we said right at the beginning of the interview, right, is being true to yourself, right? You did that with your writing. It seems like Cool Material is all about that in the content you guys produce, the side projects you decide to go on. That's really interesting. I mean, it's amazing how much that I feel like is linked to people's success, either at an individual level or an organizational level. It's really interesting. So,
well, I mean, you've obviously spoken to a lot of these people. Does that seem like a common kind of a common theme? Because it does feel so natural,
Right.
It feels like if you got a good feeling for it, it might really work out for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's especially, I think, when I've talked to people who have been kind of in the game for a long time. Executives have been around for like 20, 25 years. And I don't coach a lot of people like that because they have a lot of wisdom on me, but, I have access to a lot of people like that through, some of the different organizations we have and everything. And it's amazing how much those people are like, yeah, when I was like in my 20s, even early 30s or whatever, it's like, I was just doing everything I thought I was supposed to be for everybody else. Right. And it wasn't until I kind of figured out, no, I'm just going to go with everything I think is right. And that's when they started having success. That's when the organizations they were running or were part of or were starting all started like taking off. And so it's really cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
You're a whole nother story, right? From an individual level and from a company level that totally validates that. It's really interesting.
No, that's fascinating for me to hear too, because like you said, they've got wisdom on me too. My kind of motto or my driving thing has always been, do something that you really enjoy doing, and then, be honest about the finances. Can you make this work? And then if you can, stick with it. And I've really, I love my job right now, and every day I go in, and every day I'm excited to be there, and we have fun in the office, and I think Cool Material reflects us, and that kind of, enjoying working comes across somewhat on the website. I mean, at least I hope it does. So it's cool, and it's cool to hear that other people kind of have the same feelings.
Yeah, it was funny when I reached out to you on LinkedIn. I think the first response I got back from you, I almost kind of like chuckled to myself because I was like, that's totally the type of like you were just kind of like, yeah, man, that sounds interesting. Can you send me some info or something, and we'll chat about it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what I had like even had in my head about, how you might respond or what the managing editor of Cool Material might be like, but it was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Because I've always been like that entire website, the newsletter, everything just feels like, I guess the best way to describe it is like when I get an email from a buddy of mine who's like, dude, you got to check this out.
Sure.
It's like, that's how,
that's
exactly how those emails always feel. And it's like, hey, dude, you got to check this out. And it's like, okay, no, I trust you, right? There's those friends who send you that link. They're like, check this out. And you're like, this is going to be cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of how Cool Materials become for me. Right. And so it was just really interesting. And it's really cool to hear that, that's kind of the vibe that just exists within that organization, so that's really cool.
Well, that's a really nice compliment, because that is kind of like how we kind of view it. Like it's supposed to be a little casual. It's supposed to be like your friend saying, hey, I just found this thing. I think you'd like it. Check it out. That's always kind of been the vibe we wanted, the voice we wanted, the tone we wanted. And that's kind of like also touches on another driving force for the site, which is really curiosity in general, and just being curious about different things, which is a lot of times how these like random things pop up on the site that feel kind of different, but also like they seem to resonate with people. Like when we're like, oh, this is really interesting and different. If we're into it, maybe our readers really would be into it. And that's really worked. So, and like you said, like we try to feel kind of like your buddy saying, hey, here's some interesting stuff. We think you're going to like it.
Mhm.
And then there's some truth behind that. It's not just like, hey, we've got some advertisers and we're trying to make
Right.
money. So here's some other products that, we just rounded them up and, we're just trying to make a buck here.
Right.
It's more just like, hey, we really think this stuff's cool. And that's how the whole thing started. So we've been trying to stay true to that from the get-go.
Mhm.
And it's nice to hear that. So it feels like it kind of, at least the way you perceive it feels that way. So that's great. I mean, that's really what we're going for.
Is that typically I guess the type of personality of person who end up working for the company? And is that, I guess you said Tim, right? Who founded it.
Mhm.
Is that kind of the way he's always been, and he's just continued to surround himself with people like that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel like everyone in our office we all really get along. Now, a lot of the freelancers who I'm working with directly aren't in the office. They, are spread out through the country.
Hmm.
But the guys in the office, especially, it's just, everybody contributes. I might be managing editor, but I'm not the guy who's always picking everything for that site, or I'm definitely not the guy writing all the articles, and I'm definitely not the guy picking out the new product that's going to be in the shop. Everyone kind of chips in, and it does feel like a cohesive thing that also has some personality. And I think that's something Tim has fostered by, picking, hiring the right people,
Hmm.
and also allowing us to explore our own creativity and what we can bring to the table. So I think that's absolutely true. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So what's been, I guess, what's been like your favorite article or moment or like big thing that's happened since you've joined the company?
That's a good question. I can tell you my favorite thing that's happened since I joined the company. It's not a specific article, but um, we get invited on press trips a decent amount, and if
Okay.
you're not familiar with these, they're just the greatest perk to a job. It seems so unfair, but basically these companies reach out to you, say it's like a liquor brand or
Hmm.
a car maker, or a hotel that's looking for whatever, and they reach out to you and they're like, hey, listen, we want to send you to Hawaii for a week of amazing stuff because we want to make a good impression on you,
Right.
and somehow you're going to have to like hang out and check out our new car, but then you're going to go surf, and then you're going to go eat amazing food, and we're going to take you out to dinner, and it's all expenses paid, the whole thing is ridiculous. But they usually, but they also like they are getting something out of it too, so I can't
Right.
say that it's not stupid. So I was invited to go to Ireland for a Jameson
Okay.
feature for St. Patrick's Day. So they invited us over to actually experience St. Patrick's Day in
Hmm.
Dublin, enjoy some Jameson, and somehow tie a story around that. Well, they were cool enough to allow me. My dad has always wanted to go, and they
Okay.
were cool enough to allow me to bring. They allowed me to bring my dad. He got to experience this entire trip with me. It was such an awesome thing to like kind of tying this back to how we were before. Not that my parents ever said anything about like, are you sure you're on the right path here? But it was
Yeah.
cool to show my dad, hey, look at this. This is kind of neat.
Hmm.
And he had a blast. We ended up being in the St. Patrick's Day parade in Dublin. That was a surprise for us. We were on a bus in the parade,
Wow.
which was just wild. So I think that was a really cool moment for me. In terms of favorite article, uh, you know, back in the day, this is like going back like 5, 6 years now.
Hmm.
We were testing a lot of different stuff on the site, and one of the things we were testing was like kind of like original comedy type
Okay.
pieces. And we had a writer at the time who did a post that most people don't know it started on Cool Material, but it was uh, if the history of the world according to Facebook. I don't
Okay.
know if you remember this. This was a huge viral post,
I
maybe
do
from like
remember that.
2011, 2012-ish. He
Yeah.
ended up getting a book deal off it, and there's a paperback you can go buy. But it the site like exploded overnight with this post.
Hmm.
It never really fully completely fit with what we were going for, but it was like we were trying stuff. and it did so well, and it was so good. This Wiley was the writer who did it. I'm sure you can still find it online. It was for a little while.
Yeah, I
It
just
was like
Googled
it
it.
was yeah. Yeah, yeah. So that started on our site, and it like became a thing, and so that was cool to see. Like I'd never experienced that kind of virality before. Like
Right.
we're not BuzzFeed. We don't, we never had like one of those articles that was like,
Hmm.
nor have we aimed to, but that became like our post that was just like, this is in the heyday of when like viral things could be viral things. Like
Right.
they actually like went from site to site to site to site, and they were picked up by by BuzzFeed, and they were picked up by Dig, and they
Right.
were picked up by all these guys, and the next thing you knew, like you had all these new readers. And so I was there for that, and that was just a crazy experience that
Hmm.
we haven't aimed to do anything like that, but it was neat to see. I've never been part of something like that. It was a really wild experience. So yeah,
That's
so
pretty
people can
cool.
go see it. I mean, I'm sure if you search it now, there's a million other sites that picked it up, but it started on ours, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first thing that came up was the book on Amazon. So yeah, that's
Yep,
pretty
you got a
cool.
little deal off that. Not bad. So it was cool. Yeah,
That is pretty cool.
yeah.
So I guess as you're in your role as managing editor, do you get a lot of say, or do you have a lot of the conversations around kind of where the site's going? What's the kind of vision for the future of the site, or is that more still, sit with Tim?
We all, Tim's very cool about making this a team thing. Like
Yeah.
we're all giving input all the time. Like if you can see it a lot more on the Cool Material Shop how that's evolved, honestly,
Yeah.
because we've gotten to a point where we're producing some of our own products, which is because, well, from a financial standpoint, you make better money if you make the products yourself
Hmm.
than if you wholesale. But B, because we just like Word notebooks, we just really like the idea of like making stuff that's fun to us.
Yeah.
And you can see it evolve because we have all kinds of unique stuff on the site now, which is shop.coolmaterial.com is the actual store. Like if you go on there, you can see like all that used to be just very small. It's grown in such a unique way that it's really, I see all of our personalities in that shop, like different products,
Hmm.
which is cool. But Cool Material, the actual site, the blog itself, yeah, we're all always talking about that. It's an evolving landscape
Right.
that's been very different than what it was a few years ago. So we're always talking about that. Tim has a very good. He's got his finger on the pulse with a lot of that stuff, and
Okay.
it makes it exciting because you feel like he's kind of he understands what's going on, and he's made really smart moves in the past to like kind of
Hmm.
navigate us through, some tricky times and things like that. So we all contribute, and I'd absolutely say the site and the shop and everything that we've done, it's kind of like it spreads out like an amoeba because of all of us. There's little sections where I see me doing a lot of stuff, and I see Tim, and I see Pat who runs our shop, and he brings in an element, and there's a bunch of different people at our office that just all have their fingers all over it, and it's really cool to see. It's a complete team effort for it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's cool. So
yeah, it really is.
where do you guys kind of see the site moving? I guess for me, I get, my question comes from, I still like to read stuff, but you hear all the
Sure.
time, like, video is like the thing, and voice is coming up and all that type of stuff. So
Mhm.
I guess where do you guys see the site going in the next like 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, that's something obviously like I said, we talk about all the time. I'm a big fan of actual, we call them features
Hmm.
on the site, and those are the things that are actual original content, whether it be a list, something as simple as the 10 best movies on Netflix right now,
Yeah.
or something as unique as when I did that Ireland trip, I got to meet the master distiller at Jameson
Hmm.
and had him give me a rundown of how to taste whiskey like a master distiller. So it was like really unique and different stuff. Uh, I think we all like doing those kind of posts. They take more time, obviously, and they're a little more involved.
Right.
But I, I'm with you. I for as much as attention spans are changing and video is the hot thing people don't want to read, there's also a very loyal and very large group of people who enjoy original reporting and in-depth stories and stuff that takes a second to get through, not like,
Right.
you're in and out. We've been a little more hesitant with video, like especially with social media and Facebook, and Facebook's made changes over the years that have greatly impacted us and every other publisher out there. And video became the thing that they really wanted to push, and we just said with something like that, we just said, you know what, we got to stop allowing them to dictate where we're going to go. We need to stay true to what we believe in, and we've shied away from doing that. And I know it's not like been probably the best thing for our social media, but it's definitely saved us time. It saved us money, and we could put that in other places.
Right.
So I think I see the site evolving into hopefully more of those features, and maybe down the line we are working in video somehow, our original stuff. I'd like to bring in as much original photography as we can do. We have a couple photographers on staff who do really awesome work, but we are, somewhat limited in that capacity. So there's, I'd love to see all our own photography throughout the site, really well done articles, and just continue to curate an experience that evolves with the reader. I think we're not the site we were 6 years ago, but our reader is not the same guy he was 6 years ago.
Right.
And I think we've adapted with each other. We've kind of, we're the readers also, like the people who work there. I consider myself, I was a fan before I was working there.
Right.
So we've tried to just stick true to that and keep evolving and trying to stay on top of what we think is worth covering. And I truly believe that if you stick with, like you've said, what you believe in and stay true to yourself, you're going to find an audience. The audience is there. The audience exists. It's just you not giving in to these other external forces of, trying to make you change to grab a dollar here or there. And I see us continuing to be the same way we've been. And, Tim's always been very cool about that. We won't take on an advertiser that doesn't seem like a fit for us. And, all that stuff, as long as you stick true to what you're going for and who you are, then I think we'll continue to have a place in this, the blogosphere or whatever you call it these days.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, we're excited. The site is changed so much, and I can only imagine what it's going to be in a few years. But I know that it'll exist in some interesting capacity. So we're still excited about all that stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, so if people want to find you, if they want to find some of the stuff you're working on, maybe the articles you're writing, where's a good place for them to find that?
Well, I think, I would urge just go to coolmaterial.com. Everything else you can get through from the site. If you're interested in the actual shop, you can get there from Cool Material, but it's shop.coolmaterial.com. Hoppist, which is my, the latest project that I've kind of somewhat spearheaded, that's just hoppist.com. You can sign up for the newsletter right there. I encourage anyone who's interested to just go to coolmaterial.com. I think for whatever I'm doing, the other writers we have are doing far more interesting stuff. So people enjoying their stuff is that's something that makes me happy anyway, because I'm the one working with them. So that's where I'd encourage people to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it again. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for telling us your story. I really hope it inspires some people. So thank you again.
No, thank you, Josh. I really appreciate you having me on. And I hope some people take some stuff out of it. I kind of feel like we're on the same page with this kind of whole, mission to stay true to yourself and to try to follow something that, makes you happy in life. So I feel like I've done that. And it was kind of fun, telling that story. So thank you.